Hi.
My name's J.C. McCauley.
I'm Naisha McCauley, and you're watching AccessTV.org.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for taking your time to come out to our press conference today. Strategic Outreach Services, the Voices of Women of Color, in partnership with the State Broadband Office and Consumer Counsel, Elin Katz and team, are very excited today to release our report in which we've coined the homework gap. Today, we will be hearing from quite a few of our key stakeholders, both from the community and elected officials who we have met with and received testimony from and work with to solve our broadband problem that we face, not just in North Hartford, but the city of Hartford. But our research was focused mainly in North Hartford because there's a lot of excitement happening around North Hartford, and there's also an opportunity for us to begin to think innovatively and creatively around economic development, consolidation of both the schools and the libraries. Given that we have to figure out how we're going to restructure how we move forward in the city of Hartford, what better time to address any disparity that we have in broadband services than now. But for our exercise today, I want to focus on children and what we're calling the homework gap. Around you, you have libraries and schools here today, and we need to make sure that when those things are closed, that our children can still get online. And if their families are struggling with having services in their homes, how do we make sure that our community can respond to said matter? So today, I will first call up Mayor Luke Bronin, who will talk to us about some of the conversations he and I have and some of the work he's been doing to engage broadband providers. Mayor Luke Bronin, please.
Good afternoon, everybody. First of all, I just want to say a huge thank you to Janice Flemming-Butler, Strategic Outreach Services, and to the Voices of Women of Color for convening us all, not just today, but over the last many months, to focus on this hugely important issue for our community. I'm proud to be here with a number of public officials. Councilwoman Arjo Winch and Council President T.J. Clark, I think, is here. Our Chairman of the Board of Education, Craig Stallings, of course, our State Comptroller, Kevin Lembo, and Consumer Counsel, representing the State Office of the Consumer Counsel, Elin Katz, who has been an ardent advocate for expanding access to internet service, and so I want to thank her for her leadership on that issue too. And then tremendously dedicated community members and community leaders. I know we're going to hear from Denise Best, and I think we're going to hear from Millie Arceniegas too, both of whom have been tremendously active in highlighting this issue, in advocating on behalf of our community, and in particular advocating on behalf of our kids. You know, we have talked for a while as a city about the limitations that inadequate access to broadband, to high quality internet service presents to our businesses. You know, we're standing here on Albany Avenue where there are many small businesses. They're key employers in our community. And I can tell you firsthand, having operated my campaign office out of this building, that the internet service is not great. It is a real problem. It's a real limiter. But what's so important about today, and Janice already mentioned this, is that this survey, this work, and this report really highlights that as important as that business development and economic development issue is, there's another issue here too, and that is basic equity for our kids. And I think this idea of the homework gap is a really powerful idea that we need to make sure everybody focuses on and everybody understands, because this is a big public policy issue. You know, access to broadband, access to high-speed, high-quality internet at this point is not a luxury. It's not a nice to have. If you are going to school, you know, by the time you are 10 or 11, in many cases, you're being asked to do homework assignments that require access to the internet. And too many kids in Hartford, and in particular in North Hartford, don't have that access. There are a lot of things that we can do and that we're doing together in partnership with this group that's here to address that, but we all really need to focus on it with intensity. One of the things we're doing together is really engaging with providers like Comcast, like Frontier. As we do this streetscape project out here on Albany Avenue, we need to make sure that we're taking advantage of every opportunity to have the infrastructure in place. And we're engaging with companies like Comcast and working with them to expand their bandwidth so that they are providing adequate capacity in what they provide here. And this is really important. We are going to be going after a federal grant from the Federal Commerce Department to try to help support these efforts. It's not just the efforts of laying conduit and getting the fiber in, but it's also the connectivity. It's the connectivity to the household, the connectivity to the businesses. So we can't promise success there, but we can promise that we're going to fight as hard as we possibly can to get that grant and to seek financial support to get that done wherever we can. But with this team and this partnership of public officials, of advocates, working together to highlight these issues that Strategic Outreach Services and the Voices have so powerfully highlighted in this report, I hope that we can make some real progress in the years ahead. So, Janice, to you and your team at Strategic Outreach Services, to all the Voices, to all the public officials who are here, and to everyone who came out today to support this, thank you for what you've already done. We've got to keep getting the word out, and we need to focus on this in a coordinated, long-term way because our businesses deserve it, and most importantly, our kids deserve it. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mayor Luke Bronin, for not only your comments, but your genuine support. Also, I just wanted to acknowledge the president and CEO of Voices of Women of Color, Carla Williams, who had just came. We also have today Connecticut Comptroller Kevin Limbo, who has been a soldier on the issue of broadband. And I would like for us to hear from him and some of the ideas and work he's been doing around this issue. Mr. Limbo, please.
Good afternoon, Janice. Thank you. Thank you to Voices of Women of Color and to the Office of Broadband and the Consumer Counsel for great work. You know, a number of years ago, we started a conversation about what it would mean to make Connecticut the first gigabit state in the country. And that wasn't just for bragging rights, that was to address many issues, economic issues, education issues, that are so clearly highlighted in the work that you've done. So thank you for that, and thank you for giving us a document that we can then take to that next level of conversation. The digital divide denies and deprives our children of a basic education. And in a state like Connecticut, that is unacceptable by any measure. The homework gap, as defined in this report, is an embarrassment. It is something that we can't just look at and walk away and file a report on a shelf, but rather take home with us and know what that means for these kids and these families. It does not have to be this way. With the right investments, with the right partnerships, we can resolve these issues. And when you see state, city, and community coming together for this purpose, that's how we will forge a path forward. When you have such a homework gap, we are creating a permanent underclass. We are exacerbating the education gap. We are creating additional gap in income. And we are creating an economic opportunity gap that not only impacts those individuals and their families, but impacts all of us who are residents of this great state. The idea that a child would have to spend time in a fast food restaurant to use Wi-Fi to be able to do their homework is outrageous. The thought of a child out on a rainy porch trying to grab access to public Wi-Fi is outrageous. Connecticut can be the first gigabit state in the country. We are small enough and we are smart enough. We cannot continue to fall behind other states. We are failing our children if we don't step forward. But we're also failing our workforce, our businesses, and our future economy. Again, I'll say, it does not have to be this way. With the right leadership, we can get this done. Let's fix it, and let's fix it now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Limbo. And now we will have approaching us Hartford Council President T.J. Clark, who brought along Councilwoman Arjo Winch. Can you please come up?
Thank you, Janice. We thank you for your collaboration with the Office of Consumer Counsel Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Comptroller. The council and Archer will be able to speak as well. We stand united with these entities on what we're trying to do to provide quality internet access to our neighborhoods. For far too long, there has been a digital divide, and that there's no reason in the world why children have to go that live in North Hartford should have to sit on somebody's porch or go into a restaurant in order to do their homework. I love the coined phrase homework gap, because at this time and juncture on the state of our economy and our education system, there should be no child, no family that should not have the ability to have quality access to high-speed internet. That's how our education system has come about now, with doing everything electronically. And the fact that remains that a smartphone, is not a device that a child should be using in order to do their work. They should be able to do it on their home computer or laptop or tablet for that matter, in order to make sure that they are going to be competitive in the education system, not just within the city, but the state and our nation. And we want our children, I'm a parent myself, I want my children to have access, just like everybody else does, for them to be competitive in the education system. So we stand united on whatever that the City Council can do in order to bring quality access to high-speed internet to our neighborhoods. I worked with the Consumer Counsel back in the last session in order to get a bill passed. Unfortunately, it did fail in committee, but I stand united to work with Elin Katz on making sure that we have this type of legislation passed. And as with Comptroller Limbo said, with the right leadership, this can be done. So thank you very much.
And I like the phrase the gigabit state. You know, one of the things is always great to be first, and then because everybody follows behind you. But you know, I'm with Comptroller Limbo. If that's going to help us, and we can advocate for Connecticut being the gigabit state, well, you know what? Let's start with Hartford and make us the gigabit city in the state of Connecticut. How about that one? And as the chair of education for the city of Hartford, I chair the Labor, Education, and Workforce Council. I'm so glad to have an opportunity to be here and speak about the homework gap. Because if our children cannot do their homework, then how do we expect them to compete and to keep up with their suburbanite counterparts who each probably have a computer in their home that they can go to? And it's really unfair and unrealistic for us to ask our children to be able to be to that same level of education without providing them those same level of services. So I want to thank, the voices and the SOS, I call them, for coming out and saving us and making sure that people are rightly aware of some of the adversities that our children face as they're trying to continue and be the educated high school and college graduates that we want them to be, and then come back to Hartford to be a workforce, economic development in our city. We have to do everything that we can to deplete that disadvantage for them. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Arjo Winch. Today we don't have Dr. Leslie Torres Rodriguez here, but it makes sense for us to highlight her and acknowledge her, because it was through the conversations of consolidations where the voices and SOLs really held down and began to think about the homework gap. So I wanted to say thank you to her for setting a table for all of the stakeholders for consolidation, so that way we can begin to think more broadly and holistically while we're thinking about consolidation. What does broadband mean for our children? But what we have here today to help us frame that conversation is the Hartford Board of Education Chair, Craig Stallings.
Thank you. I'm just going to be brief because Council President pretty much wrapped it up, and the President of the Education Council Committee pretty much wrapped it up. But what I would like to say is thank you. This is actually a gift for us. I know that it's a working proposal and you're working on it, but this is what we need in order to turn our school system around. And in order to, what we are looking for in our Hartford school system is quality. We need to reinstill quality in our education system, and this is one way we can do that. We're talking about our financial crisis and how we need to mitigate our expenses. This will help us immensely. If you can just think about it, use your imagination, for example. A school day where school is canceled because of snow. Now our children can participate online. They can do things, they can do homework online. the teachers can communicate with our students and our parents more efficiently. We can possibly start to have online classes. We can start to do a lot of different things with this this opportunity. So I appreciate this on behalf of the superintendent and the board. This is a wonderful thing, and I promise you, if we can establish this and if we can do this, I promise you that the children of the city of Hartford will show you in test scores. They will show you that they're ready to learn. They can show you that they can learn, and we will achieve greatness in this city. So thank you so much for this opportunity. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
So what makes sense for us to do right now is to kind of hear from a young person who is actually facing this challenge. One of the things we wanted to do in this research is bring voices that who would be directly impacted. And so we're going to have our young high school Hartford student come up with Millie Arciegas from Hartford Parent University, and kind of let's hear from him on some of his challenges on with broadband services. Thank you, Janice. Yep.
Hello, my name is Josh Rosario. I just wanted to clarify that I'm now a student at CCSU. But in this day and age, shouldn't we be offering students all the resources they need to be successful in any career path that they choose? During my time in high school, internet access was something of a pipe dream back then. I didn't come from a wealthy family, so my brothers and I would have to spend 2 hours in our school's library after school, getting any work done that we needed to do for our classes while we waited for our mother to drive us back home. She was usually busy assisting other parents with their problems and attending PTO meetings. So we had around 2 hours a day after school to finish work. We did think about using the public library's computers, but they were usually being in use by other students. And it would have also meant waiting for a computer to open up for an unknown amount of time. Internet access was a bit of a hassle back then, but we should be making strides in today's society to help out future generations. Every child, no matter their financial status, deserves to have the resources to succeed in today's world.
Josh, can you just spell your last name?
R-O-S-A-R-I-O.
Former Hartford student.
What high school did you go to?
Buckley.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Millie Arciegas, and I'm the Executive Director of the Hartford Parent University. I want to thank Josh, because that is what we go through as parents. Most parents in Hartford, they're struggling to get this access on the internet, and some of them don't even have home computers. So what I want to note is that Hartford Parent University engages, empowers, and mobilizes parents to be a part of the decision-making process of their children's learning. Partnered with Hartford Public Schools, Hartford Parent University is building the demand for student-centered learning to transform systems to ensure every child has an equitable educational opportunity. In student-centered learning, which is what the district has outlined, there is a principle called learning is anytime, anywhere. How do we make that happen for all children? We have kids now that have laptops, but with no internet access at home. So how can that be possible for that child to continue his learning anytime, anywhere? And that's where I stand with this. I partnered with Janice because I don't want to see the kids on the stoop anywhere. Not at the school, not at the McDonald's, not at anywhere. I want to see them at home and be able to access internet. So with that said, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Millie, for all of the work you do with our children. Lastly, we will have Denise Best, the Upper Albany NRZ chair, along with the Blue Hills. Are you the director of the outreach department? Well, she does outreach for Blue Hills. Yes. Please, Denise, come. She's all over the place.
I have enough hats. Good afternoon, everyone, and I'd like to thank, first of all, Janice, the founder of Voices of Women in Color, Women of Color, and Elin Katz from the State Office of Consumer Counsel, who came to our NRZ and discussed this issue with us. I am also the communications manager for Blue Hills Civic Association, directly to my left. And all too often, my colleagues and I can be heard yelling across the office, "Is the Wi-Fi down? Do you have internet?" I'm the communications officer, and there are times when I can't communicate online for anywhere from 10 minutes to up to an hour. Many of our businesses along the avenue have suffered, and even the Pond House in Keeney Park has its issues. But my immediate concern is for our children. Schools are requiring our children to do their homework online, and schools make the assumption that each child has access. This, unfortunately, is not our reality. Every school day, the Albany Branch Library, directly across the street, has between 100 and 200 children trying to access one of 6 computers to get their homework done. Every day, there are children who have to leave that library at closing time without having had the opportunity to do their homework. We're not talking about playing games or social media. We are talking about required homework. Even though the internet was invented in the United States, Americans pay the most in the world for broadband access. And according to a statistics portal, Statista, in 2016, the Comcast Corporation generated revenue over $80 billion. Over $80 billion. I think that they can afford to be a good corporate partner and provide free internet access to our children. Thank you for coming.
So there you have it. I want to thank all my partners. I want to thank Elin Katz and the State Broadband Office, her team, Bill, Veronica, everyone for kind of helping the voices at SOS think about how we can work with other counties and other areas who are addressing this issue. We want to thank all of our key stakeholders. We want to thank the press for being here today. And we ask you all to continue on with the conversation to think about how do we have broadband services in every home for our children so we can begin to close the homework gap. Thank you very much. Yes, you can ask questions.
Okay, so I think what we heard a lot today was about the problem and how it impacts. So what did the report say, and what were the recommendations in the report? Just a brief summary.
Yeah, so the report first, one of the things that we didn't want to do with this report is come with a whole bunch of data and the percentages, right? And so this voice have real voices on it. And what it revealed is that we've been talking about the problem, not in a wrong way, but our focus around the problem has been around small businesses, and I think we should be talking about it around the homework gap, and the report will show why we concluded that the homework gap was the better way to talk about this issue.
Okay, so what you want is for the providers to come in and lay some broadband?
I want something greater than, I think the voices in SOS want something greater than that. We want this as a very comprehensive plan, right? So we see the broadband as being a huge component of it, right? But I also stated earlier that we see this as an opportunity. When we're talking about economic development, we should be talking about broadband services. When we're talking about consolidating libraries and schools, what does that look like as well? And we can't truly have those conversations if broadband providers are not on board. And so I will say that the Voices of Women of Color in SOS will be pressuring the broadband providers. I'm trying to be nice today. I have on a dress, but you can best believe this is the first beginning of that pressure. And we all know pressure busts pipes. So that's what we're here for. And so, but what we didn't want to do, one of the things the voices did not want to do is continue this conversation in silos, having the businesses have their little conversations, the libraries having their little conversations, in education. We need to think of these things holistically, especially because we're talking about consolidations in all matters. right? If we're going to have to share resources, what does that look like? If we're going to be building stadiums and DOT is going to be spending a lot of money on the city of Hartford, what does that look like in terms of technology? Right? How do we support the city of Hartford by making sure that the economic development is done in partnership with broadband providers? Any more questions? Thank you very, very much for weathering this hot, hot day with us, and we look forward to seeing you at one of our many tables to continue the conversation. Thank you.